Good morning and welcome to BlackUSA.News. Marcia Jews, how are ya?
I am wonderful. How are you? How's everybody? And
it's been a busy week, Marcia.
Yes, it has. But I'm here to talk about BEA. And let me tell you something. The Black Engineer of the Year Awards Conference is coming up fast, and it's February the 11th through the 13th, 2021. 35 years as the most anticipated diversity event of the year. This annual conference is a talent-rich environment for recruitment, networking, and professional development. All in attendance are corporations, corporate leaders, college representatives, thousands of professionals and students from across the country. It's an array of professionals from entry level to CEOs representing the top people in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, disciplines, and careers. The fields of expertise represented at the conference are as diverse as the men, women, and children who attend. Highlights for the upcoming BEA conference: the HBCU Village, the K through 12 Village, the Interview Village, and the HBCU Reunion. To attend, all you have to do is register at www.beya.org. That's BEA.org. And it is phenomenal. I've been involved with this since the middle of the 90s. And I'll tell you, it's a phenomenal experience to see so many people involved in this area. So look forward to it. Make sure you register. And the events that I just mentioned are all free to the public. BEY.org. And I'm Marcia Jews, and I approve this message.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everyone. How are you today, Miss Maria?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm Kivette Minor-Kane, and I'm so glad to see you here today. Welcome to BlackUSA.News. And so you're coming to us from Harlem.
I am.
Yes, and you are a distinguished member of the Harlem Business Alliance.
I try to be humble.
And an awesome recipient of the Joe Mann's Black Wall Street Awards. So congratulations.
Thank you. I did appreciate it.
So what are you doing right now? What's going on with you and your business? And what would you like us to know today?
Well, let's see. I've become very community active.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually a member of two groups. One is the Greater Harlem Coalition, and one is the Mount Morris Park Improvement Association, MMPCIA. And MMPCIA has been around for a while. They are, they do a whole bunch of stuff, scholarships, events, a house tour, just, uplifting the community and making sure that we prosper, having meetings with political officials or, law enforcement. And then the Greater Harlem Coalition, they are a new organization. Okay. And essentially Harlem is having, in certain areas, the state has been oversaturating the neighborhood with drug treatment clinics. We have at least 11 within a 0.4 mile radius. 76, yeah, no.
That's a huge saturation.
Oh, it's concentrated. 76% of the people who come do not live in Harlem. So, we are working towards and actually being sort of successful in raising awareness. Mm-hmm. And membership. There's now currently, it's a membership organization of faith-based organizations, block associations, and local businesses. And there are now 85 plus members. And yesterday we had a DA forum. I think we had maybe 8 candidates with us.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it was and quite well attended. It was actually great. So those are the two things that I'm doing while we're on COVID restriction.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you've been busy.
Well, I mean, it's amazing. Community activism could actually be a full-time job.
Right.
It is.
And it
It is.
really has to be if you want change. You can't
Absolutely.
get it sitting down and being quiet, right?
Well, luckily, there are a lot of people. I think there's like 24 people who really have dedicated, their time and expertise on different things.
Mhm.
So, with that many people, although there's always, the core five, there's one young lady, Eva, I tell you, I mean, I don't even think she sleeps. I can't keep up with her. So,
That's a big deal. Yeah. But you've
You
got
need
people
that.
like that in every community, and we have to recognize and acknowledge them and support them in that process. Even if we can't dedicate the same amount of time and energy and effort that they can, our support allows them to not have to carry such a heavy weight. And that's absolutely huge. So one thing you said, you're talking about the concentration of those drug treatment clinics in Harlem at this time, and obviously highly concentrated in just a 0.4 mile radius. That's, such a small location. But then that brings to mind, how is that working in terms of the gentrification that's currently going on in that area as well?
well, I have, I have a personal opinion about gentrification.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's my personal opinion. People may not agree with me, but I was born and raised in Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was born and raised in this neighborhood where I live right now on Lenox. And for a time, Harlem was neglected and empty. I lived on 120th Street between Lenox and 7th. We had at least 10, 12 abandoned brownstones on the block, at least. 8th Avenue between 110th Street and 120th Street, empty lots and abandoned buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened? Those empty lots and those abandoned buildings were redeveloped and put on the market. And then you had an influx of new residents because, of course, the rent was higher because, it's economics also. You build a building, you do it for a return. But no one got displaced during that process.
What year was that, Maria?
That development of that strip on 8th Avenue, as well as the development of the brownstones, that pretty much started, I would say, in earnest right after 9/11. I actually think 9/11 had a lot to do with it because the prices started escalating for brownstones as well as, apartments. I think a lot of people decided that it was safer to live uptown. So that's where I start. So I'm not a person who believes that the influx of the individuals were the cause of Harlemites being displaced. I do think currently they are the cause because now prices are so high. I mean, we're even talking about a container of milk.
Exactly.
I mean, there are a whole host of reasons why living in Harlem now, economically, you would think about leaving to go to a cheaper location, and that is dislocation.
I lost my business through gentrification in Harlem at 124 and St. Nick, right?
Okay.
All right. So it was trying to hold on. It's now the last time I was up there was a dry cleaners, but it used to be a beautiful Zaj art gallery right there on the corner.
I remember where it was, right across the street. Was MCU there?
It was diagonal. There was some kind of food thing on the corner of 124, and you have the firehouse. George and T were down the street on across the street. So but it just, the rents and everything went, I mean, everything just started go. It was so out of control, and I was selling everything. I was selling things out of my house. I sold jewelry. I sold everything trying to hold on. I just couldn't. I
That's
just
what
couldn't.
the displacement was
And
crazy. We've
it was
lost 30.
horrible. And I was a new business, only been in business a couple of years, but the heartbreaking was I went to Harlem because I wanted to be in a Black community where Black people were doing it, right? That's why I moved to Harlem. And there were all these amazing businesses that had been in business for generations, and they were going out of business. That was more heartbreaking. Generational wealth was being passed down, and we couldn't hold on. I was more, and I'm still saddened by what they went through, because that's why I went there, right? Than I was about my own business going out of business. And it was really, it was deep, man. And there was nobody who was helping to change that. It was horrible.
Is that still?
Well, that's a great transition. That's a great transition to Maria's to the organization that you and your neighbors founded.
The Harlem Coalition.
Talking
about Donnie?
Or MMP?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, what did you tell me you started this week, Maria? What was the name of the group that you and your neighbors started?
The Greater Harlem Coalition.
Right.
And we started that. You know, we've lost, I mean, I think 30% in 5 years of businesses. We just see them, and these are businesses that we all went to, restaurants, bookstores, you know, and yeah, the rent is, you know, ridiculous. But I'll tell you a little story about the Greater Harlem Coalition and why we are so active in trying to change the oversaturation. There is a building called the Corn Exchange on Park Avenue and 125th Street. And it was a landmarked building that, you know, it ended up being one floor, but it was still landmark. And this developer restored the building to look almost like it's original. I mean, if you look it up, the Corn Exchange, it's a famous building. It is at the Metro North Station. So when people come from Connecticut or upstate or wherever, they can get off on 125th Street. It's 1 block away from the 4, 5, and the 6 train, which are the East Side Lexington Avenue Express trains. The rent, it's an office building. The rent is $45 a square foot. Now, that is a very reasonable rent number for commercial space, and it's a new development. They've been empty for the last 5 years. And the cause and the reason is because of there's a clinic right across the street on Park Avenue in the Lee building, not one clinic, one that serves about 2,500 patients.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you have all these drug addicts right there.
Well, you know what comes with them. And then New York City or state, in their infinite wisdom, drops another 1,000 homeless people from Ward's Island and Randall's Island at the exact same location on 125th Street and Lexington Avenue. It's like, and that is 0.4 miles away from where HBA is and the other set. So when I say concentrated, that's only on the east side. We also have another one on the west side. And then even though we've been talking to the powers that be about, you know, let's stop, let's think about this. No, they're opening another one on 145th Street. So it's
145 and what?
Between Broadway and Amsterdam.
What?
Yeah,
that's my old neighborhood.
Oh, really? You know the phase piggyback building?
I lived at 144 and Convent Avenue, right on the corner.
Really? That's where I spent the first 7 years of my life.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. That's and that neighborhood was it's a community. So now you're changing that whole dynamic from Broadway on, because Broadway right there to Convent. Come on now.
And it's the businesses that businesses are suffering. Like I
Right.
told you, you can't get a commercial tenant at one of the best transportation hubs in Manhattan.
Right. That's horrible.
Now, we have businesses over here that actually had to hire security. And Broadway, between Broadway and Amsterdam, is just having sort of a resurgence of business. And they have not been as gentrified up there as we are down south of 125th Street or south of 135th Street, I would say now. But once you start that, what's going to happen? Now your businesses are going to suffer.
Well,
I actually had someone who was supposed to take a tour of the space in order to do an event. They missed the appointment. I sent them a text and I asked them, would you like to reschedule? And she said, no, we came and we don't want to be in that neighborhood.
Right. And that's a concern as well, because right at the bottom of Convent, you have City College. And right. So you have all these students, this is a college here, university, and they're going from Convent over up to Amsterdam. Come on now.
No. I'm sorry. Don't even go there. The clinics that we have on 124th Street, one is across the street from a school. And now I'm talking about a grade school. And there's another grade school on Lenox, and there's a high school on one block over. So within 2 blocks, there were 3 children's schools. So, when you start talking about college students, let's hope that they're smart enough not to get involved.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Hold on one second.
That's a lot. That's a lot. So
I should be grateful down here in Sandtown, Maria. We only have, I said I should be grateful here in Sandtown. I got about, we have a handful of addicts in our alleys, vacant houses compared to New York City. I guess I should be really grateful that it's not worse.
New York is going through this whole community activism thing has gotten me involved in, for instance, politics, in laws.
I'm glad you said that. I was watching Clubhouse. Are you on Clubhouse yet?
No, not yet.
You'll be there.
Okay.
But Saturday, so you have a mayor's race. June 22nd is the primary. And of course, the first person I met, I think it was the day I met you, was Eric Adams at the was it the Harlem Commonwealth on 125th Street?
Yes, that big meeting we had
a year and a half ago.
Yep.
And so that's where I met Eric Adams. But since then, in terms of the Black community, the other big name I'm hearing is Ray McGuire. Now you have a corporate background, and you can relate to Ray at least from that corporate aspect. This is a successful guy from Wall Street.
I'll tell you a story. I entered corporate, dating myself here, 1980. And I started doing more work in Harlem, I would say about 2003. That's when I pretty much pivoted from corporate work. So I was in corporate for about 23 years. I met, and a lot of it was banking. I met one Black man who was over 6 feet tall. I'll start there. The few Black men that I did meet, and it was probably in total 3 or 4, were probably 5'5" or smaller. I mean, it almost looked as if there was a deliberate attempt to, because of some biased fear, to make sure that there were no large Black men walking around, and essentially no Black men at all. I was in tech, and I was frequently one of one or one of two wherever I worked. And I worked for Wang, I worked for Chase, I worked for Deutsche Bank, I worked for West LB. When I started my consulting company, let's put it that way, that's when the Deutsche and the West LB and the Goldman Sachs, they were clients. One of one, one of two, So yes, I do have a sense of Ray's accomplishments for him, especially in finance, to achieve what he's achieved.
Because it's rare.
It's very rare. I mean, I remember there was a Black man at a bank who did something untowards, some white collar crime. And by this time, I think, EFHUTton had already blown up. I mean, as far as white collar criminals. And the New York Times writes an article and says, what does this mean for Black people in finance? I mean, come on. Y'all have been committing white collar crimes for as long as there's been a white collar. But when one Black man gets caught, accused, because I really don't even know if he was ever convicted, but accused of some kind of impropriety. Now, all of a sudden, what does this mean for, the future of Black men in corporate? Yeah, I can't imagine it was easy for him. And I will even go beyond that. I did a lot of work when I had my company. Most of my clients were German banks. And I think that the Germans of that age, they were born after World War II. So they went through the reconditioning. And they seem to have a little less bias. It was like, just go to work. Some of my best clients, I have to say, it was wonderful. Yeah, I think if I had to rely on doing that same kind of business in American banks, I would have gone out of business.
Welcome to the conversation, Robert Higginbotham. Robert, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Donnie. Happy to join you. Sorry about the late arrival.
It's okay. We're talking with Maria Granville. We have with us the one and only, the indomitable Marsha Reeves Jews. And she's got her Billy the Kid by her, Kavette Minor Kane. Robert, tell us your background.
Well, my background, I'm trained as a lawyer. I've worked in government for most of my career, in some aspect. I privately work as a business consultant doing any type of business development, trying to help find access to capital, working with startup businesses.
Good deal. Do you know anything about New York City?
Other than to be very careful and to be well capitalized when going in. I do some minor real estate in New York City. I'm talking Manhattan, the borough of Manhattan. So I'm somewhat limited there.
So, Marsha, let me tell you, I met Mr. Higginbotham when his brother was running for Congress here.
Oh, who's his brother?
Who's your brother?
Yeah, my brother is F. Michael Higginbotham. He is a law professor at the University of Baltimore, New York University, and a somewhat regular guest on CNN on race issues.
Hey, did you mention University of Baltimore?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's his primary teaching location, University.
Okay, so we were talking with Maria about the mayor's race. There's a June 22nd primary. So, Maria, you were telling me about a young lady. Was it Diana? Who was the young lady that spoke to the New York Times and spoke truth to power?
Diana Morales. Young, I guess she's Afro-Latina, as you know, when you have to label people. But she made a comment, very early in the race. Everybody's jumping into the race, and I guess someone asked her about cannabis, and she made a, comment about, I think she said that she preferred edibles than smoking. And, when the New York Times did their first pass on talking about the candidates, that was the only thing they had to say about her.
Right.
Not what her policy would be for this, not what her platforms were, only that, she said that she preferred edibles. And she called them out for it in a very
good,
well-written set of tweets. I mean, I was very impressed.
Good.
Very impressed.
Good for her.
Yeah, exactly. So she has spunk. She's not afraid to speak her mind. That's important.
It's critical. And we have to have an opinion and to be able to do that. So when I know Donnie had a reason for you to be here, Higginbotham. I just want to really get an understanding of, are you also funding programs in buildings or developing businesses in Harlem or?
Well, no, you asked me from my background, and that is the background. I suspect Donnie asked me on because I'm a communicator, and I can discuss on a broad breadth of topics.
Oh, you're intelligent.
No, let's just keep it.
No, I'm like how you were describing Ms. Morales. I will take a position and I will speak it quite firmly.
Wonderful.
In that position, and I guess I make for good communication.
Well, that too, but we're looking for a sponsor. That's why,
as you know, Donnie, I'm reaching out on that. I'm making efforts on that.
He's a money
man. Kavette, I need you to close the sale. Okay, so Maria.
Hey, we'll double team him, Donnie. We'll double team him.
No, they're going to double team you.
Right.
Maria,
the money man.
We don't know yet.
You don't know. You got to listen. You got to keep up.
So Maria, we talked about Diana. We talked about Ray McGuire. Eric Adams, what are your thoughts?
Eric is very popular. I think he's one of the front runners. I know they count position by the amount of money that's been raised, and I think he and the controller, Stringer, have raised the most amount of money. I've heard Eric speak, and one thing I would say did strike me as very blue. And they were having a mayoral forum discussing mental health and, police response and medical response, EMS response. And, trying to navigate what candidates really think versus what they think you want to hear is one thing. So most of the candidates on the forum spoke about, the need for change and the need for, some type of, which I agree with, effort to ensure that the mentally ill person doesn't die, which happens too frequently.
Too often, yeah.
We all know this. And when you call the police because you need help, that help shouldn't be a bullet.
Exactly.
And, I have to give Eric credit for being forthright, but his response was, listen, we have to, ensure that the officers and and EMS personnel are safe, first and foremost. No, you know, that's not what you want to hear when your daughter or your son, you know, is having an episode.
Right.
You want to hear that we're going to bring in a net, we're going to, you know, bring, whatever devices and techniques we need to subdue an individual, okay, who is going through a mental health crisis. As long as they don't have a gun, you know, I mean, obviously, if you have to protect yourself from a deadly weapon, you have to protect yourself from a deadly weapon. But we're not talking about, we're talking about, you know, I feared for my life, so I shot him.
Right.
That has to stop.
Well, I think a good bit of that is training. You know, there has to be training for the psychological aspects and not the law enforcement aspects. You have officers going out who they're used to meeting force with force. That's what they know how to do best. Part of it is because they have not been trained in the techniques, Maria, you're suggesting. And that's something we need, I think, to pour quite a bit of money into, is their training, as well as trying to change the mindset, you know, and the policy situation that they have.
I don't understand that. I'm sorry. That don't even make sense to me. They're human beings. They're human beings.
No, they're police.
I am talking.
Oh,
They're
sure,
human
go right ahead.
beings. They're human beings who can see that there is clearly a problem. And they need to be able to adjust to the fact that you can tell when somebody doesn't have a gun, they're sitting there, they're going through epileptic whatever, or they're angry, or they're out of control, but they don't have a weapon. If you do not have a weapon, there has to be a human side of what you're supposed to do. And what we end up doing, and this is all over the country, Baltimore, New York, everywhere else, you get these white supremacists brought in who are running the doggone police departments. They're running the departments and they're out in the field, and nobody's going to control them. Nobody's telling them, because what they're doing, and they've been trained to kill and destroy our people. When you see those white people out there, they're not doing that to the same white victims. They're to the same white patients or the same ill people. They're doing it to people of color. And when you sit down and you look at the statistics across this nation, it is not equitable. And that's BS.
Marsha, I'm certainly not trying to suggest that a police officer should shoot someone, an unarmed person.
And my point is that you have a mentality that has been brought into the force. We're bringing in people from the countrysides of Pennsylvania, where all those people live up in the hills, work in the mountains, and they come down here. They can't stand no black people, and they come down here, and their goal, their missive is to kill, steal, and destroy. And you can tell that that's the truth by the numbers of dead black people we have across this nation.
Well, certainly, I don't want to suggest that those are the type of people we should hire as our police officers.
They're hired already.
But if they're in there, then it is training that hopefully will counteract.
How you gonna train somebody to say, I don't hate black people?
No. I'm not talking about the hate. No. That's not what I'm suggesting.
You got to include it, because that's a mental health training.
I'm talking about the training as to how they approach and confront the situation that they're faced with, whether that person is black, white, green, or purple. Certainly, we know that there's racism and systemic bias that has been in the police departments since the police department existed.
Did you see those people climb those walls down in the Capitol? Those are the same people that are on the police force. Those are the same people from across this nation doing the same daggone thing. And
they are white people that feel they have privilege. They are white people that feel they have privilege. They need to be put in a position or made to understand.
They need to be taken off.
They must follow laws like everybody else, and the full force of the law will come down on you if you behave like that, which is one of the reasons you see the massive FBI going around arresting people across the country that have participated. Please, Marsha, I'm not trying to say there is no problem. I'm just suggesting the approach that we might go about it to bring proper change.
you're saying we don't go around killing our own people, or do we? Marshall?
Well,
we
you're bringing up another issue.
That's a different conversation. That's a different conversation.
Yeah, I agree with you, Marsh.
But one that needs to be had for real.
Yes, indeed. That might be a good topic for another
day.
Yeah,
another day.
Exactly.
But that is a topic.
Go ahead, Marshall, with your thought. I'm not taking issue with you that there are serious problems within the police departments across the country.
No question.
I'm just trying to look at, well, what do we do about that? How do we stop the action?
Exactly.
How do we stop that?
What is going to be the solution that we can come up with? And the most reasonable thing is to have a combination of the police force when someone is calling 911 because they need emergency help to respond, along with those EMTs, emergency medical technicians who are trained to respond to a medical issue, so that then they're able to, assess the situation together. Or if you have someone who is cross-trained, so if you have a division on the police force now, if there is a mandate created so that across the nation in every police force, there has to be a unit designed for giving attention to mental health crises, then they're trained not only for the force that is needed to enforce the law, but also with the care that comes with being trauma informed.
So
that's an excellent first step.
What would you like to see?
Go ahead, Donnie. I'm sorry.
Kavette, what would you like to see?
What would I like to see? I would like to see that mandated. I would like to see that happen in every police force around the country, in every county, in every state, in every city, everywhere. I mean, and I think that would be the most reasonable solution, because when you have people who are not medically trained, unaware of what mental health response looks like, then they do become afraid because they think that this person is really coming to attack them and their lives are in danger. When you have someone who is medically trained to understand what a mental health response looks like, then they're better able to, separate the person from the action. And they would be able to put in techniques that would maybe put them down, but not take them out. Because that's the whole thing. Just like Maria said, we don't need the response to our mental health cry for help to be a bullet, because that's not going to help anybody.
That's a good first step, but I want to go back to a point that Marsha was making, which is you get one police officer out there that shoots and kills the unarmed person, but then there's another one there that says, "Oh no, wait a minute, we didn't need to do that," and uses better restraint. That's the question. Is it training? Is it the racial bias that Marsh was bringing up? What is it that makes that difference?
It's a bias.
We already know the answer to that question.
I want to see somebody do an actual profile before they even hire them. And even if they're in there needs to be a psychological testing program to deal with these people, because it's very clear. If you sit down, any diversity, inclusion, equity company can tell you that. I can tell you that. You can sit down and ask 10 questions, and those questions will tell you off the dome whether or not these are racist individuals, and that they have the potential to murder somebody. That it's so ingrained in their DNA that they would automatically just shoot somebody to end the conversation, versus having a conversation and talking down an individual who has a problem. That's not being done. And it's very clear by the numbers of dead Black people by the hands of the police departments across this nation.
Now, maybe the measures that are being taken, Marsha, and I hear you, because that is actually something that is a part of our police recruiting technique.
It's not
necessarily the test, but who's reviewing the test?
But it's not functional.
Are there people there who look at the test, see the name on the test, and then pass them because of that?
It's not functional. They're not functional.
It's the same way that many Black people, Black men and Black women, have had to change their names on resumes to even get a response from corporate America. It's like you can't go in as Shaniqua. You got to be Olivia.
Let's hear from Maria. You started this, Maria.
Well, I mean, jumping into this conversation, I would say, and taking it just out of mental health and just talking about policing in the Black community completely, my thing would be, or something I've advocated is if the police union had to pay the settlements, I can guarantee you they would think twice before shooting people.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they themselves could get sued, they would think twice. It's a payment thing. In addition to that, I think that the current environment of police reform needs to be even more amplified, and these cops need to be held accountable. Now, when we could actually say that we've had more police officers indicted in the last 2 years or 3 years than in the history of police killing Black people, but still, there's too many who are not being indicted.
And what's the impact? What's the impact now on police officers? Because we're experiencing what you explained to me earlier this week. We're experiencing that here in Baltimore with the consent decree that came in post Freddie Gray, where now the police have taken a knee. They've fallen back. As long as you don't kill anybody, you can sell all of the heroin, cocaine,
everywhere,
crack that you want. As long as you don't shoot anybody. That's what has been created in Baltimore. Has that been created in Harlem?
We are seeing the effects of bail reform. So, and now I'm really understanding clearly, why people say that they want centrist politicians or they want moderate politicians.
Right.
Because, on the very far left, and I used to call myself liberal. I can still call myself liberal, but I'm not sure I can call myself progressive. And, even when you do something extremely progressive, like you go all the way to the wrong side and you see it's not working, well, then bring it back quickly. Bail reform, we, as part of both of these groups that I'm in, we meet with the police brass from either the precinct or from New York City. And, we're hearing that if they arrest someone for a low-level drug crime, they are actually on the street before the paperwork is done. So they're not doing it. And so your dope dealers aren't going to jail. They are now emboldened in order to be able to sell in just broad daylight. Like, cop could be standing right there. They know they're not going to get arrested. There's no accountability. And without accountability for everyone, for the police, for us, for society, if there's no consequences for bad actions, you're going to get a lot of bad actions.
Do you think police corruption has gone up? Do you think more cops are taking payoffs from drug dealers?
Oh, I don't know if. Well, let's put it this way.
Sounds familiar.
First time, not to say that it wouldn't be the first time. I mean, they make movies about that. So
if I'm a cop, if I'm a cop, and I see you selling dope on that corner every day, at some juncture, I'm going to ask you for my tax or my donation.
I can't say one way or another. I've never seen it, but I have seen it in the movies, and I believe it exists. So
other than that, does Eric Adams, beyond his strong blue stance, does he appeal to you? Would you vote for him?
Well, my concern is that he would have the motivation to change the police force. De Blasio was supposed to be a lot more effective than he was. And he had an opportunity to put a Black police chief in, And instead he went and you know, he got another white one who, again, does not make any changes other than, well, you know, if they don't like us, then we won't work. That's not working for us. You know, we expect you to do your job.
I want to respond to that, you know, if, you know, they won't work, especially to Donnie's comment about here in Baltimore. To me, that's a policy situation where our administration should be getting with our commissioners saying, look, if you have officers that don't want to do their work, you know, here's the door. They, you know, they can leave. You cannot report and not enforce the laws of our city.
Right.
That's a problem. I mean, that's clearly, that's something that needs to be nipped right away. And as a policy point,
yep,
it needs to be made clear to the blue line, to the department, right down from executive staff or right down to the streets. That's not a game that's going to be played, and that's not a game that your politicians are going to tolerate in a city. And I just wanted to, you know, I wanted to address that point. So
that's
go
huge.
ahead, Maria.
That's huge. Higginbotham.
I
That's
agree with
huge.
100%.
Yeah. Marcia, the other thing, it goes back to something we were talking about earlier, and I wanted to just throw it out there for discussion. When they do find a bad officer, one of the things that just I could not believe, as like a lot of these cases were coming down through the year, there's no database that shows they were fired for doing this type of activity from one department, and they just go to another department and do the same activity.
Right.
That's amazing to me.
I'm hearing the need for a national registry of for racist cops. And I also think they ought to have to sign an affidavit that they are not a racist. At the very beginning of their tenure, I am not a racist. Are you a racist? Yes or no? And if they say no, I think if they are found to be a racist, they should be fined like twice as much.
So
or they should be sentenced twice as long.
Who would create that? Where would that come from? Is that a law that's a national law by a governor, or is that something that's coming out of the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
Well, you got to look at where the current registry for like child sex offenders and things like that, that's something that has been legislated, you know, that it has to be in place. So then we could create one, you know, on our own, just say, you know, I don't know, you know, killers of black people, I don't know, cops that kill black people.com, you know, and create the registry just from word of mouth or, you know, tips within the community. But then you run into, you know, people just saying stuff about people and defamation.
It needs to be an organized.
Right. So then how do we get to the legislation for that?
Well, that's what I was saying. It needs to go through something like a CIA or FBI that is set up. And
we get your brother. We get policing. Let's get your brother, the law professor, to head up a national registry for racist cops. No, racist ass. You say racist ass.
We'll discuss it, but what I wanted to say is that most policing is administered locally. In other words, it would first start within the local department. Then the state could have an overall, like the affidavit that Donnie was suggesting, that could be implied. The other place, but it's hard to get it done there, but this is really the place that should be cleaning up police officers, is their own union. They have a lot of incentive to correct this because of the financial problems, the problems that happens to their families. And to the life of me, I don't understand why the unions don't step in and really do much more on this issue.
Because they're racist too. They're racist too. They're the same people who got out of the police departments across this nation, and they're the same racist cops.
Same people.
They're not going to try to change anything. Come on now.
I guess that's right. I don't know. I was being too idealistic, I guess. I was looking at issue orientation rather than the personalities of the people involved. So I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
I know.
You're right. Well, I think we've come up with a lot of very good suggestions. We've come up with about 4 or 5 actions that could take place that could go a long way to bringing about some revision in the department.
So I heard you say, did I hear you say you were also an attorney?
I'm not licensed attorney. I've been to law school. I don't practice in the courts. I do mostly corporate work with corporations, financial aspects to the corporation.
The reason why I was asking is
But I do know my criminal and civil law and procedures. So go ahead.
I figured you had a piece to that. So
Yeah.
the question that I have then is, does that get written up somehow and goes to an entity that is a mayor or a mayoral? You know, there's a Black legislative mayoral type conference. There's a national organization of Black county officials. There are all these organizations that have the leadership of all these cities. Why wouldn't we submit something to them like that says these are requirements that, and we get all of these other organizations behind us and sign this petition that says this needs to be something that needs to be done in order to start trying to abate this problem of murder in these different districts?
It should be a regular agenda item. You're absolutely correct, in a lot of different organizations. I guess what we have to do is either individually on our own, or our certain traditional groups, Urban League, NAACP, etc., needs to reach out and place these as agenda items.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to also come back about, I was talking about the local, but there is an opportunity to do things nationally to clean this up. It's just much more difficult to get it through the House of Representatives and the Senate and to make it some type of national standard. But yes, that's what we should have, a national standard. It's just
right.
a very, very large hurdle. So you usually start local, but no, an agenda item in these various organizations, it should be there. Absolutely.
It should be there. And, maybe it starts, it has to start somewhere. Who starts it? Maria's looking like, okay, that's a lot, right?
I think the congressional
I think it probably already is an agenda item. And I think that, I'm an accountability person, I guess, since I keep using that word today. We have to hold our elected officials accountable. And like I said, what is my fear with Eric? Although I think he would be a great mayor, that blue line, and the union is crazy. Bill Lynch, I swear he's descendant from, who.
I do know.
So, how do you actually break the line? How do you break it? It's not something that's going to happen immediately, but it's something that you have to want to do, and you have to expend political capital to do. And I mean, I'm like, well, what did we get in order for you to let this continue? The last 8 years of this current mayoral administration, did we get something? Did you have to give something up so this could continue? So you did not insist that the cop who choked Eric Gardner was fired? I mean, what exactly does it take, Mr. Mayor? Is it completely blue line?
So let me ask you this. One, the Congressional Black Caucus is one entity that deserves approaching as it relates to this racist police registry. But I wanted to ask you, Maria, what do you expect from a Black mayor?
Well, I definitely expect the police reform that we've been discussing. That's one thing. I expect economic opportunities. In New York City, Scott Stringer has a database called Checkbook. And you can, search and filter on a whole bunch of things. And if you search and filter on MWBE spend, You know, the last time I did it, I think I did for 2017, they spent 1.6 billion for MWBEs, and we know that that's minorities and, you know, women, and but remember who's a minority, you know, and women. There's white women, there's Asians, there's Hispanics, there's American Indians. I mean, you know, it's everybody except white men. And then there's, of course, disabled veterans, which are white men. So, but in any event, you know, when you look at the spend, they spent $1.6 billion, and Black companies got 16 million of 1.6 billion. And, you know, so let's get this straight. These policies and programs were put in, you know, in force because of our struggle, which, you know, we did have some other ethnicities stand with us, but it definitely really wasn't that. It wasn't the white women. They still not standing with us. And, but because—
Oh, you mean Karen?
Because of court challenges, now you know, everything that was supposed to be there to right the wrongs of your wrongs, we're still not benefiting from. So I would expect the mayor to make that change. Education, big, you know, I am so tired of hearing people say, you know, parents have to be involved. It's the parents, the parents, the parents, the parents, the parents. You know, I guess Ronald Reagan in 1980. So I'm just, you know, becoming an independent adult. The parents have to be involved. Okay, fine. You know, I have kids. I go to after school. I go to parent meetings, blah, blah, blah. And all I hear is parents need to be involved. Parents need to be involved. I'm here. You're preaching to the choir. Number one. Number two, we've been saying that for 30 years. You can say it for another 30 years. It's not fixing anything. So if you really want to fix something, take the problem that you keep saying out of the equation and then fix it. You know, you can say that school goes from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. You can feed child breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can educate them. You can entertain them. Art, music, you know, help them with their homework. Feed them dinner. When you send them home, all they need to do is sit down, play video games, watch TV, and go to bed and start over the next day, right? Parents don't have to be involved. They can be involved if they want to be involved. Nobody's saying, you know, don't let them be involved. But why? If you keep saying the same thing, you expect it to change? You know, it's getting worse. Every child that doesn't graduate from high school, every you know, child that ends up in the school to prison pipeline, you know, once they have children, what's going to happen? It's generational. You have to break the cycle. And so education is one, and I would like to see, you know, real changes. And it doesn't necessarily need to be money, even though, you know, heaven forbid you get a textbook in schools that are in low-income communities.
So what about a computer and access to the internet? How about that?
Computer access to the internet. We need to get everything back that we used to have in public school. We need music. We need art. We need sports. We need, what do you call those? Vocational training. All of those things used to be in public school in New York City, and they have systematically cut them out, and they are wondering why our children are failing. Not, I mean, maybe because they don't have anything that really excites them about coming to school. You know, maybe just being able to play the violin is enough to make me want to do my math. You know.
But look at the color. Look at the melanin that's in the skin versus in the other zip codes where there's no melanin, and you don't have that same problem.
Right, because the private schools have all that. The private schools have
And
all
public
the
schools
things that
in
we
the zip codes,
consider.
and public schools.
Yes, in some zip codes, but to the degree, the things that we used to always take for granted, all the extracurriculars, pardon me. I loved woodshop. I was supposed to be on an academic collegiate track, but I love to do woodshop. Pardon me. There are a lot of activities like that. So I just throw that out. That
It's
it's not
real.
Yeah, and for the other side, people that are not as less fortunate, that are paying very huge tuitions and have these beautiful campuses in the suburbs, they have all that curriculum that used to be there because they know how important that is for the development of the child and for the future success in going on to higher education.
It's real.
So let me ask you, Maria, about minority business. Now, that's how we actually met. And let me just say that Marcia has been a great part of keeping us abreast of the work of the Harlem Business Alliance, Mr. Walter Edwards. So for the next mayor, what does the minority/Black business community need from the next mayor?
Well, yeah. You know, how to develop Black businesses without having a court challenge. That's the question, because you can't say Black without being sued by white people or Asian people or even Mexicans. I think someplace, there's some Mexicans and Asians suing because of discrimination.
Maria, I thought these programs started off because Black people were discriminated against.
Yeah, that's what I said. But anyway, cannabis is something that the Harlem Business Alliance and I are working on, cannabis legislation. We've been actively trying to ensure that the legislation is written in a way that benefits Black people. We've done our research. We already know that 86% consistently, year over year, 86% of the people who have been arrested for marijuana possession or whatever are Black and Latino. And when you break that 86% out, it tends to be 53% Black and 40 whatever, how the numbers work. So we already know the answer if the definition of so just to catch you up in case you don't know, almost everywhere where cannabis has been legalized, the state and the municipalities have tried to enact a social equity program. And then there's a lot of noise about, the war on drugs and how disproportionately impacted Black and Latinos, and they say all the right things, right? But then when they enact them, they all fail. One license, Black license holder, or maybe 6% of license holders, like on the West Coast, are Black. So they're not doing a good job. And that's what we're trying to make sure, that the legislation in New York City is done correctly. And if you use language that and have policies that can pass a court challenge and actually wouldn't even survive a submitting of a court challenge, then you can really do things. So when it comes to Black businesses, not to say that, all Black businesses, every Black person wants to be in the cannabis business, but that is something that the next mayor can use as a tool if using the right terminology and processes, like the most harmed, can direct and create finally a way of Black people having all of the benefit of a new industry and first to market, exclusivity. All you can write all of that in to the legislation, okay, in order to make sure that Black people and Latino people are the beneficiaries of this new industry. They get every opportunity to succeed first. The next Black mayor can make that happen, at least in New York City. We're still trying to work on making sure it happens for New York State.
Well, Maria, I think that that's great in terms of a new industry. But let's talk about what we do have now. When I'm in Manhattan, I'm in Harlem. I'm up and down there where Harlem Hospital is. I'm telling you, you got entrepreneurs falling all over everywhere. You got cart people. You got small businesses. But what they don't have are that I'm aware of. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a New York person. But I don't see programs that are set up to feed them money, to get them into the banking system, to get them the access to capital, to get them the type of business advice and creating a business plan or expansion plan, or to get into export or import marketing. I think those are the kind of programs that if a mayor pushes those in a very strong fashion, it gives access to the whole plane of business opportunity. Now, I agree with you, new time business, marijuana, there's a lot of money to be made, and we should have a fair access, greater than a 6% chunk of it, like in California or whatever we have here. My brother was on the task force for making sure, for the growing component, to try to make it fair here in Maryland so that we had at least one bidder that was African American that would have the ability to grow marijuana and sell to all these retail stores. It didn't happen naturally. They had to throw all the bids back and rebid again so that to make that kind of thing happen. When
So, Maria,
you know,
Maria,
so all I'm saying is that we need to. I'm sorry, Donnie. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Maria, earlier this week, we had Walter on. You want to handle this, Marcia?
No.
Well, we had Walter on, and of course, Black business is important to him. But when you talk about the most harmed, you know, Walter's not pulling any punches, and he's very, you know, I don't think he's very pleased with the elected officials. You have one or two that, but he seems. I asked Walter, what about all of the hip hop stars that come out of New York? Your Jay-Z's, your famous, well-known names. How have we attempted to connect with them? Because if money is the issue, certainly you've got stars with enough money. When I look at the people who were on the call with Van Jones, you know, there were people with some money. Now, granted, what you need, about 10 million to get a dispensary going?
I don't even think it's that. No, not a dispensary. You need 10 million to 30 million in order to do vertical integration, meaning to have a license, you know, at every step of the way, from seed to sale is what they call it. But I want to get back to what Robert said for 1 second, and we're talking about the Harlem Business Alliance, HBA, and we're talking about Walter Edwards. And Robert, there are organizations as you described. Now the question is, are they funded well enough, okay, to do the work that you described? And HBA is one of those organizations, and I can tell you that their executive director spends, I don't know how much time, you know, chasing a $25,000 grant here and a $30,000 grant there, you know, when actually what they need is more like $100,000 grant there and a $500,000 grant here. And just
how do we make that happen? How do we get them get the funds into the organizational structure that's already there that can make the impact? What do you do?
Well, if you're looking at the city, and that's what we were talking about, the mayor.
That's right. That's right.
So, does the mayor have the authority to fund these organizations to do quality work? SBS is a city agency, the Small Business Services. And quite frankly, they got an F on Scott Stringer's yearbook. He does an annual review of the agency's spend for minorities. The Small Business Services got an F.
Yeah.
That gives you some idea, I mean, and when you talk about the types of businesses, for instance, tech, I was in tech. Try to get a bid, I mean, if you want to do something, you have to be forceful with it. You can't just try to horseshoe it into the current situation, because obviously if we could have succeeded in the current situation, we wouldn't need you to do something
Right.
about it. Why do we need to bid if we are an MWBE? I mean, we had to fill out 9 pages of paperwork, send taxes back to Kazoo, ship them our firstborn just to make sure that they know that they're Black.
So you're advocating a procurement officer that can sole source certain contacts directly to minorities because they've met certain qualifications.
And they're sole sourcing them to the major corporations. They're doing that now to the corporate majors.
Yeah, they do that.
So the infrastructure is already there. They just don't have the right color.
Right.
Exactly. And that's the problem. I mean, I gotta tell you, I went to so many of those MWBE forums, from the SCA to the MTA to DASNY.
Racism is real.
I mean, just over and over, networking. You hand people your card. You ask if you can meet them for lunch or have a phone conversation. Try calling. See if you ever get through.
Nothing. Okay.
No.
Maria, one thing, the budget that could come out of city council, is that anything I mean, would an increase there be effective, or is it more of the networking component you're describing that's just not responsive?
Robert, it's almost like you're naive to the racism that we face.
Well, in a way, see, I'm a guy that see.
Where are you from?
Let me explain to you. No.
Where
there
you
are
from?
walls. I've had I'm from all over the country. I've lived all over the country, from Boston to LA, from Cleveland to Atlanta. I've had a lot of experiences, Donnie. But what I'm saying to you, that I'm used to having the wall up there. But see, I'm the kind of guy that I'll keep beating this head into the wall. Either two things are going to happen. This thing is going to get bloody and bleeding, or that wall's going to give away. I have gotten my share of contracts. When I was in Boston, my company, Business Planning Consultants, had a direct contract with the city for going in and helping people with business startups or whatever they wanted to do. They'd come through, they'd get funded by certain community organizations. I'd get paid. The people would come away with a business plan. I connect them with banks to get funding. That worked. I'm not saying that works everywhere. And believe me, I do understand. I've had a lot of discrimination. I can tell you horror stories about businesses I've tried to operate and couldn't get through to the procurement decision maker, could never get an appointment. I might call up every day for a week and couldn't get an appointment to go in and present my product. So no, I'm not naive about it, but I still have I have a kind of belief that I'm going to keep punching. I'm going to keep trying to go through that wall. I come from the background of Blacks that make a way out of no way, because we've always had this element of discrimination. And only a few of us, maybe 2 or 3%, have been able to break through. What we're talking about here is how we make an even playing field to get maybe 50, 60% of our people being able to break through, because they're just as good. Maybe I got lucky, but they are just as good. I'm sorry, Don, I went on too much, but that's what I'm saying.
But you're on point.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay.
Kavette, you're down there. I don't want you to get too far gone. And we're talking about selling marijuana. We're talking about a black mayor potentially for New York City. We're talking about mental health issues. We're talking about what we expect from our black elected officials. Chime in, Kavette. I don't want you to fall off the chair there.
Okay, well, I'm gonna fall out while Cavette's thinking about it. I gotta run, guys.
There's so much that needs to be done.
Okay, Marcia, thank you.
All right, take care.
Okay.
See you later, Mama. No, there's so much to be done. It's just being able to find the organizations who are currently in the process, such as the Harlem Coalition, the Neighborhood Association, and even the Harlem Business Alliance on the business side there. What are those organizations in different cities? Are they working together? Because the challenge is that, we see a lot of folks have individual organizations and they're doing their individual efforts, but we know that we're stronger together. And so I believe that this forum is an opportunity for us to present that opportunity for those who watch us, those who listen. Where are you being involved in your community organization? Well, now you know who you can reach out to in another community and bring your organization with their organization. And now you've got double the efforts. Being able to make a difference is really what the significant purpose here is.
So Maria, your final thoughts, and how can people support you and your efforts?
Well, my final thoughts. It was very nice being here. Thank you. I didn't know what to expect, but it's cool to have opinions and to listen to opinions, and it's almost like The View.
Better than The View.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't have McCain, so that's a good thing. So I thank you for having me on. Our organizations, where the Greater Harlem Coalition is concerned, we really need to get to the state, because it's the state that licenses these clinics. We actually need, again, there is this thing that we didn't really talk about, which is the medical and the medical redlining. And that's another thing that our mayor really needs to take a very strong look at, because these facilities up here are keeping their patients on methadone pretty much for life. That's the idea. Which, that's not rehabilitation. That is, they've compared it to insulin, and it's crazy.
So I want to get this out there. You said they got needle exchange, methadone, and homeless shelters in the same block. So I'm coming in for methadone.
And a school.
So I'm coming for methadone. The dope man cross the street, and my kid go to school over there.
That's pretty much it. And
you said the city hired a nonprofit to clean up the needles, because there's so many needles on the ground. And again, I was complaining because I got 5 needles outside my door. You saying you got 100?
It's a lot. They have so many that they hired the same organization that hands out the needles to go and pick them up. Yeah, it's a lot, and it's in the name of harm prevention. And my question is, well, who's harm preventing the community? So we're going to just keep that fight up. MMPCIA, I think that they are. I just got elected to the board. I've never been a part of the organization, but I've known of their existence and their work. So hopefully we're going to be able to make some, good changes. I'm always about the economics. So I'm looking to see if we can do things like figure out how to sell our air rights, because most of the buildings around here are landmarked, so you can't really use the space. But it would be great if, you could use that space to send your kids or your grandkids to college. So that's one of the things that I'm looking at doing.
we got to wrap it up. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, M. Granville at home to Harlem .nyc, and that's HOMETOHARLEM.NYC.
Good deal. Maria Granville, we love and appreciate you, our Black Wall Street awardee right there in Harlem. And I will be up to see you shortly.
All right.
Mr. Higginbotham, thank you for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you for having me. I truly felt honored being with such a distinguished set of informed individuals. And I think as we go back over the recording of this, you will find 5 to 6 very clear items that we can do to affect the change that we've talked about here. So thank you, and hope to be with you again.
Kavette Minor Kane, thank you for joining us. Up to date, down tomorrow, do your day, and everything will follow. Nothing to it but to do it. I got to do it, regardless of how I feel. I am somebody. I am my brother's keeper. Good morning, BlackUSA.News.
Thank you.